Hey folks, Troy Dooley, the Beachside CEO, and as you can tell by the title, this really doesn't have to do with business. It has to do with some of the current rhetoric that we see from politicians, from the media, even to a certain degree that we see from just the advocates out there. And when I mean advocates, I mean those that are proponents that racism or racial discrimination is worse than it's ever been, and those that say, oh no, that it's not. And as I was reading through the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, I was listening to some of the rhetoric on both sides that came out of the first debate last night from the Democrats. I got to thinking about this and realized that there's so many times that people will say things that are offensive. I mean, it may offend me, it may offend you, and all of a sudden we want to say, well, they must be attacking us because we're a white middle-class man, or we're a black person, or we're an Indian. It doesn't matter what it is. Maybe it's because, well, I call myself a patriotic American nationalist who's a Christian, while somebody else may call themselves a patriotic American who's a Muslim, for that matter. And all of a sudden, the true issues, I think, when it comes to discrimination and racism, two different things, by the way. I don't think we can say that women are racially discriminated against, but without a doubt, if we look at it, they definitely have been discriminated against. Children, to a certain degree, have been discriminated against. So when I sit and I look at this whole cotton picking mess when it comes to what is racism, what is discrimination, I think we as individuals will sometimes say things that actually promote racism even when we're trying not to. That's what I think. If we start to divide a nation by talking about the black man or the white man, is that not discriminating against black women and white women? And what about yellow women or yellow men or red or whatever? What about the brown? Do you see where I'm going with this? When I see the rhetoric out there, all I ever hear talked about is how there's racism in America today and how bad it is for black folks. And then I'll go read something else and it'll say it's worse than ever for the white man. But now think about this. I never see much talk about the Indian nations, the discrimination, the racism that goes on there. Very seldom do I see anything where it talks about the Tex-Mex men and women who are of a mixed culture that come in from Mexico and they're Texans. We don't see all this. We seem to isolate what we want to isolate, whether it's the media, whether it's politicians, doesn't really matter. We as the people need to stand up and start thinking this thing through a little bit. We either we're all Americans or we're not. Either we have communities that we want to see become better or we don't. Let's take Chicago for an instance. We could take Baltimore, we can take LA, I don't care what we take. Any city that we read about in the paper today that's gone bankrupt, whether that's financially, morally, doesn't matter, whether murders and shootings are at their height or whether they're the greatest community to live in. When we get right down to it, we can't blame a politician, we can't blame big corporation, we can't blame racism, we can't blame discrimination. We need to blame ourselves. Doesn't matter what color we are. We're either all Americans or we're not. When I was active in the Marine Corps, one of the things that they taught us from the day we went into boot camp to the day I retired from that was that everyone was green. We could be red green, yellow green, black green, white green, but we were all green. Didn't matter. And I think right now, those that are out there propagating the intolerance of white people, black people, if you're out west and the intolerance or the the making fun of the Indians or the Mexicans. I just think it's uncool. You know, when I sit down and people say, Troy, why do you call yourself a patriotic American nationalist? I say, because that's what I am. I believe that America is the greatest country in the world because I live here, because I'm an American, and because I believe in its people. I believe that it's we, the people, that actually make up the country. It's not about a flag per se, although everybody knows I love the American flag. Matter of fact, I love the American flag. I love the Confederate flag. I love the 13 star flags. I love the Do Not Tread on Me flag. The reason I do is it all shows a history of what America has become today. It shows where over the 500 and some odd years that it took to get to here. Got to understand, we started settling the continent long before we became a nation, long before we started fighting for our freedom. We came into this country and we settled it, and it's become what it is today. And why is that? Because both from the indigenous people that we know as the Indian nations, to the Spaniards that came in on the west coast and a little bit on the southern borders, to the Europeans who settled up north and through the central side of the eastern side of this continent, we all came together. We didn't care about the background or the nationalities. We went through some funky periods where we had the Salem witch trials, where we had slavery in the country, where we had the Asians being treated wrongly as they built out the railroads, where the Irish were treated badly, where the Italians were treated bad. See where I'm going with this? Everyone at some degree can yell and scream and holler about racism and about discrimination. But yet through all of those periods to this point in history today, I would debate and contest anyone that says we are not better off than we were. When I was a young kid going to church, it was an amazing time for me. I grew up in an area where my dad was the bus driver for all the old people. So all the old people would get on the bus and he'd bring them to church because they couldn't drive anymore. And here I am, 12, 13 years old, sitting in the back of that bus. And I'll never forget that the old man we called the candy man, because he was always giving out candy to the kids, looked at his wife after one of the Kansas City Chiefs, who was black, had come to church that day with his white girlfriend. And the stuff that came out of this old man's mouth has been burnt into my brain. Because as I sat there at 12 and 13 years old, I knew what he was saying was wrong. I knew that the words that came out of his mouth were atrocious. And that was in the 70s. And when I look at where the 70s were, you didn't see mixed couples. This was in the Midwest. You didn't see mixed couples walking down the streets of Atlanta, of Birmingham, of Dallas, Houston, none of the southern states at all. And yet today, some of my dearest friends are of different ethnic groups: black, white, Asian, Muslim, Jewish, it doesn't matter. So before we, as the people of the United States, go off half-cocked and get all of our panties in a wad about how bad and divided the country is today, I would challenge you all to sit down and think this through for a minute. Who's actually creating that narrative? Where's that narrative coming from? Because in the communities where I get to travel throughout the United States, I see people coming together. I see different social groups, different ethnic groups, different spiritual, religious groups coming together, communicating, finding a common cause and fighting for that, making their communities better. Is this like that everywhere? No. There are powers to be throughout the United States, the subcultures. I know great 1%ers and MCs out there, motorcycle club members, that because they have long hair and beards and they have motorcycles and they wear patches, that they all must be outlaws. And that's not true. But yet, is that not a form of discrimination? Is that not not what we're talking about, what we're against. See, it doesn't matter what the group is. Look, I don't care if you just call yourself a coal miner. Coal miners seem to be discriminated against. Oil men seem to be discriminated against. See where this goes? There is no freaking stopping it whatsoever. So instead of going out of our way to exacerbate the situation, to support the stupid politicians, and there actually are some smart ones out there, but instead of us buying into their rhetoric because they've got their own agenda, as the republic, as the people of the republic, why don't we for once, I don't know, once in the last few decades, because since 60s, it doesn't seem nobody wants to stand up anymore. But why don't we, the people, do what we did in the 60s and say enough's enough? This is we, the people. We're not going to let somebody else divide us. We're going to realize that we got some evil people in this country and we'd like to see them put away. We know that we've got some ignorant people that just don't understand everything and we want to educate them. But for the most part, whether you're a Christian conservative, whether you're a Christian liberal, whether you're an atheist liberal or an atheist conservative, whether you decide that you want to say I'm an American Muslim or I'm an American Jew or I'm just an American redneck, doesn't matter. Why don't we as Americans decide to come together in our own communities and start making a difference, start doing something? How about we do that for a while? How about we focus on the evil, the true evil that's here, and decide how can we put that somewhere, do something with that? How can we change this? I don't care what your spiritual belief is. I care about what your human belief is. If you believe in people the way that you say you do, the way I say I do, then let's come together and make a difference. Let's try to go out there and say, look, let's find what's right. Because I guarantee you this, all Russians don't hate America. All Americans don't hate Iran. Iran probably doesn't hate everybody else. Here's what happens. Government control. It's a few people at the top that run these governments. They get in a tizzy, and then the rest of us think, man, the whole country must be awful. Now, I'm not saying we're going to eliminate wars or anything like that. What I'm saying here is there's always a remnant of people who say, you know what? I have the best country. I want to go out there and compete with other people. I want to go collaborate with other people. Not everybody wants to go to war. I'm prepared for war if we need to go to war. I'm prepared to defend my family if I need to defend my family. But it's against true evil. Not just because somebody looks different. Not because they go to a different church. Not because they eat different food. We are all Americans, and it's time that we stand up and start acting like Americans. Hey, it's just my rant for the day. I don't do these all the time. Usually I try to keep it to business. But the more that I see coming out of the mouths of media, doesn't matter what channel you watch, it's on all the channels. I'm tired of it. I listen to politicians, they bicker amongst themselves and then they bicker against other parties, and who fails? Here's who fails. You and me. We're done. You need to team up with people in your community. I don't care if you live in the middle of the worst neighborhood in Chicago. You guys can make a difference. Maybe you live in Baltimore or Detroit and you say, man, you don't understand, Troy, it just sucks. Don't want to hear that. You can make a difference. One of my best buddies who does all my tattoos, and he didn't let that stop him from making a difference in his family's life, and you can do the same thing. So let's do this together. Hey, guys, I'm out of here. This is my anniversary today. Yes, we'll be going on 33 years. Man, and we've known each other for 39 years. Matter of fact, I was teasing her earlier today. 39 years ago today, I got to give her her first kiss. You know, that's a pretty powerful deal right there. And still, after 39 years together, 33 years married, wouldn't change a doggone thing. Period. Hey guys, we'll see you next time.